maybe the next drug addicts on the street, the next people who simply needed one person to believe in them. So I started working in the school system when I was 20. I got a nice little after-school program gig, nothing much. Teach dance, put on dance shows, create dance schedules. It was my big boy job. And I was very blessed to work with a lot of people. And 2 years after working there, I got a special ed job. I became a special ed aide, got some college experience as well, and thought, you know what, this might be cool. This might be a job where I can become a sped teacher. Who knows, right? And my wife and I were trying for a baby for a pretty long time, but after a couple years, my wife's pregnant, and we are super excited. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, I'm not really making any money here at this school job. I met a guy who was in sales, and he told me how much money he was making, and he pretty much told me what the job is, and he simply just said, I'll tell my boss about you. And I didn't know a single thing about selling cars. I just knew I was hungry. And I actually learned a lot about sales. I learned the art of selling, how to talk to people, how to feel out a customer, when to push, when to pull, how to get a commitment, how to talk to people. There was this one salesman who was always the number one or number two all year. He always said, just make a friend sell a car. And that was the best advice I ever heard. Because when you're simply just, in a sense, hanging out, yes, you're answering questions, you're giving them product knowledge that they didn't know, you're giving them real facts about the car experience. When they can trust you and they can just feel like you're not there to rip them off. I'm simply just the dude who left his passion to get sales to make more money to feed his family. If you want to buy the car, let's do it. But if not, I'm not gonna be weird about it, right? And I was in sales for about 2.5 years, and there was a point where everything did become transactional. I realized that I'm not really making a huge difference in life. Screwing on someone's license plate isn't as impactful as, helping a kid get through a hard time during freshman year. Also, just like most jobs, you're replaceable. I would see so many people go into the dealership and try to get a job because they got laid off or they quit or this pay plan stopped working for them, and you just see a lot of car salesmen jump ship all the time. And that same person that told me make a friend sell a car, he would always say they keep trying to chase the leprechaun. Obviously they're trying to chase the pot of gold, because when this thing changes or this management shifts or this place gets bought out by this huge auto company, you're constantly moving back and forth, and I just didn't like that. And the hours were unpredictable, and I'm not afraid of working long hours, right? I used to work 16-hour shifts at a group home, so it's not that the hours were bothering me. It was just whether those hours were spent doing something that mattered. I used to think, is this really where I want to spend the next 20, 30 years of my life? Would I be balling? Yeah, but I just really missed and loved being in education. And I really believe education matters. We have a friend who their child is wilding out in school. The school does their best to provide interventions for the child, and I'm convinced, since I've known the kid for well over 6 years, that that child simply needs a male figure in that school. That's why I believe a lot of men should be in SPED. And it's a double-edged sword, because I've seen male staff say the exact same thing a female staff tries to say to a child, but it just hits differently. And it's vice versa too. I've tried to say stuff and I can get through with the kid, but then Miss So-and-so comes and it's like magic. And the cool thing is we see that at the highest level of sports. That's why you see all those inspirational football, basketball movies with the high school coach, visiting the kid or whatever. And if you're wondering, I was a 0.3 student in high school. I was going to have to repeat 10th grade, and the principal told me at that school, you're pretty much either going to repeat or you need to go to another school and get your credits up. And that's where I found Miss P. I'll just keep her last name as P. This teacher, no pity parties, did not feel sorry for me one bit. She pretty much said, you're gonna graduate, you're gonna be here, you're gonna get your work done, and that's it. And that is what I needed. I didn't need no emotional story, but all I needed in that moment was just somebody to not give up on me and to make sure that I exceeded my expectation. And today I'm now becoming a special education teacher. And it's crazy because I look back and the 11-year-olds that I taught, they're now like 21, 22. I remember being at the dealership one morning and my old student calls me and he tells me that he's a father. And I'm mind blown. Like, what a blessing it is first off, for him to have a child, but for him to call me. And if you're in education and you feel like you're not making a difference, or you feel like these kids aren't listening to you or respecting you, and you want to leave, please watch the episode, The Changing of the Guard in the Twilight Zone. He's worked all these years and these new teachers are coming along, essentially taking his position. And he becomes depressed and he feels as if he never made a difference. And as he wants to end it all, he hears a bell. You gotta watch the episode. You have to realize that we are raising the next generation. The next lawyers, the next barbers, zoologists, maybe the next pastors, the next athlete, the next mothers, the next fathers. But unfortunately, maybe the next felon, maybe the next drug addicts on the street, the next people who simply needed one person to believe in them. Sometimes one teacher keeps them from falling. It'd be a dream one day if I get a call or a letter in the mail or a text and it's an old student of mine and they're inviting me to their wedding or their baby shower. It would be a dream that I can just, put on a polo, put on some slacks and head out and just cry and watch them. And, it's because we want to see the ripple effects of all the care and all the time that we put in. I see those ripple effects, I don't know. So men and women, if you're watching this, especially for men, you have to realize that your number one calling should be in your house. It's the dishes, it's the living room, it's the bedroom, it's the house. It's keeping your house in order, having a harmonious marriage, having a safe place for you to rest your head, knowing that you're making a difference. Thanks for watching, take care.